the movie, you have to have a lot of thinking. I agree with that, but it's worth it, I think. So yeah, we can debate that, but let's see what we can understand from what this movie is about. First of all, let's try to summarize the movie and see what was the movie, right? What is the story? People sometimes think that Tarkovsky is a cliche. That is, I think, it's a misconception. In general, they think Tarkovsky's movies don't have a story, don't have storylines, which is, I think, wrong. They have stories, right? But sometimes the stories are stuck. You know, sometimes the story doesn't go forward. But the story is there, and that's the point of those stories. This movie is not one of them. This movie actually has a story, one. Second thing, that the story goes forward with a nice rhythm. The story is actually very progressive. The story has ups and downs. It has suspense. There are a couple of scenes that it has I think, very interesting suspense here. Before explaining the suspense points, the reason is because this is adapted from a novel. It's not the storyline of Tarkovsky himself. He adopted, as Khashayar said, from a short novel called Ivan, and there are reasons that he explains it in his book, Sculpting in Time. You can go and read it. He explains the background and context of all of those movies. I don't want to go into them. But this is the movie that he made, as I said before, again, in his third year, when he was 30 years old. The first movie after university, the first real movie he made was for like his thesis. It was his exam, basically. This is the first real movie that he made, and he got a review. He got a positive review from Jean-Paul Sartre. The story has, as I said, suspense point. The first suspense point, major suspense point I can remember right now, it's on top of my head, is entering of Ivan into the story. That is a major concern, right? It's like shocking, really, when you see what is it called? Gaitsev is sleeping. First you see the dream, but forget about the dream. The escape of Ivan, back to the story, in reality, and coming, and we see that Gaitsev is sleeping, right? You see his fingers in a very beautiful shot that he's sleeping, just light is on his fingers, and somebody wakes him up and said, there is somebody who we have caught. We have a feeling that is Ivan, but we are not sure. But the major encounter between Ivan and Gaitsev is shocking, because Ivan is the person who is telling him, ordering him, and he is a lieutenant general or a colonel there, and he's not getting an order from a child. So right there you can see a tension, a very interesting suspense there. Who are these characters? Is number 51, he says, go and call number 51. That 5-10 minutes is really amazing in terms of a story, if you're looking for a story. Another major, again, so there are a lot of major suspenses, right? I think that we agree the romance scene, if you can call it that, between Masha and Holin is like, it's crazy, right? It's a very weird, and it has a lot of suspense. It's weird, but it has a lot of suspense. It's a story there, right? The way they kind of dance around the trees, it's very, I think, my heart rate was up at that moment after watching it for a few times, right? Another big suspense is the mission, right? If I want to encapsulate the real story, if you read the novel, actually, it's and here's a joke. Actually, this movie is in a Hollywood way, it's Saving Private Ryan, right? But with a Tarkovskian style. It's a kid who comes back and they want to go, and there's a mission right there, and they want to go back, and one of them is dead. They recruit another young guy who is there, and they go there, and the kid is died, right? Was dying there. In the story, actually, in the novel, the kid is not dying there. It's like really a Hollywood ending, that the kid would come back as a hero, okay? But obviously, this is not Tarkovsky's style, and the way we watch it, we don't feel like, right now I'm saying, I think some of you might say, no, it's not right, that bad. because he doesn't make it like a Saving Private Ryan. It's obviously different. So there you go. There is a storyline. There's lots of ups and downs. There's lots of suspense. I was saying that the return without Ivan is quite a suspense there, right? It's quite a suspense because we are not sure as an audience. Is Ivan there in that pile? Now we kind of guess that, this is the two people who were dead there. They cut the ropes and they bring him back. But we are not sure where is Ivan because at some point, Kholin is saying that, I think he is successful. He hears something and says, I think he did it. So we are not sure when they're returning. Is Ivan with them? And then when they're quiet, we are not sure that is Ivan dead. Actually, Tarkovsky is at every point, at every dream, he's telling us, Ivan is gonna be killed, right? This is Tarkovsky. There is no secret there. In all of those dreams, we know that there is kind of a return to his mother. There is innocence that is being killed, right? We know that. We can guess. Even in very small details, he's getting a knife. He's saying that this was from my friend. He died. They are going out for the mission. When the mission starts, you remember there are some scripts. There are some scripts on the wall, right? The translation of those, do you remember? It comes as a subtitle. Obviously, it says that we are gonna get shot in 1 hour. Yeah. How else do you expect the director to, as explicit as that, tell the audience that these people are gonna be shot in 1 hour? Of course, in the storyline, those scripts are there. In Ivan's dream, we see why those scripts are there, because some of you might ask, who wrote those, right? We see that he hears some voices, that he hears some voices that we understand. These were the Russian hostages that were in that building and they have been dead. Germans came in, they killed them, right? They killed some of those hostages. They went, now it's Russia that is taking over, right? In that camp, in that basement. And now we see that, so those scripts are from the Russian hostages that were there. But when they're going out, we see that zoom, so it's up, you see that focus, so it's obviously telling us something, right? There is a meaning behind that. So there is a lot about the story that we can tell. I mentioned some of them. It's a adaptation that Tarkovsky takes and changes it and beautifully turns it over to his style. So this is, I think, in that sense, a masterpiece. How can you take a story and change it the way you want? I think that is what Tarkovsky does in most of his movies as well. He takes the most tragic human stories, right? A kid being killed, a kid being shot at the chest, right? Innocent kid that is in a war, insisting to go to the front. This is a very tragic, very human-related story, but at the same time, he makes it like this is nothing, right? Has no meaning at all. At the same time, he takes some very superficial themes, right? تمای کاملا در واقع سطحی و بی‌معنی رو برمی‌داره و معجزه میکنه و تمای فاجعه رو تبدیل به اتفاق عادی. اینجا یه اتفاقی انجام میده تارکوفسکی با تکنیکش که توضیح میدم چطوری، ولی جای این دوتا رو عوض میکنه. جای فاجعه و یه اتفاق عادی، جای اتفاق عادی و یه معجزه. So it takes miracles of normative things that you see in life, and it takes tragedies into normal, unimportant things. One scene that I was thinking that I can show at this, for this thing, sorry, yeah, it's better to do it. This is where Ivan is coming, and you are a director, somebody tells you, I want a shot of the kid sleeping, right? Going to sleep, right? The way he uses his camera, it's unbelievable. The way he shows a relationship, a living existence, coexistence between Gaitsev and him. A bond is being created. So how does he show it? Did you see that turn, right? And I will talk about these turns and these camera movements because I think they're key to what he's saying. But what I'm trying to say is that just the way he shows sleeping of a kid, just a very, right, a very rudimentary event in a movie, and how he plays with these small things so that he gets what he wants. Okay, what does he want? I think most of the critics on one other thing that I forgot, all of the dream scenes are additions that Tarkovsky added to the story. There is no dream scene at all in the story, in the novel, in the book, okay? So now going back to the, what does he want to say, or if it's necessary to say it or not, I'm talking about the worldview of Tarkovsky, not what does he want to say, of course, and we can get to there by what does he want to say. But the most important notion in making a movie for Tarkovsky is, in art of cinema, for Tarkovsky, is a space and time, right? So why, how does it happen? I would give you 8 elements of how he changes his cinema. He makes a different cinema with everyone else who's making films, right? By having a different, by imposing his views on time and space. طوری که به فضا، به معنای فضا، به معنای کلیش، و تصویر و صدا و زمان، فضا و زمان نگاه میکنه، با همه فیلمسازهای دیگه متفاوته. اگر این رو توی تارکوفسکی بتونیم بفهمیم، تازه دریچه‌ای باز میشه به اینکه بتونیم از فیلم‌هاش به یه شکلی لذت ببری. ولی اگه حتی بهش فکرم نکنی، با اون رویکرد اول که تو خودتو در اختیار فیلم قرار بدی، در واقع توی فضا و زمانی که تارکوفسکی داره تعریف میکنه قرار میگیره. فضا و زمان توی فیلم تارکوفسکی فرق داره با بقیه فضاها و زمانها، چه با واقعیت چه با فیلم‌های دیگه. بنابراین اگر همونطور که گفتم اینجا برمیگردیم اون حرف که 2 تا رویکرد داریم، میتونی خودت رو رها کنی یا بهش فکر کنی، به این فضا، بازی فضایی و بازی زمانی. چطوری؟ Space. There are a lot of things to be covered in a space. There are a lot of things to be covered in a space, and how he make the movies so that it's different from every other art, and it's critical for his cinema. First of all, just from a very basic questions that we can ask from this movie especially, what are the spaces that we can see here that are different from other movies? Most of the film is happening in the basement, right? In the basement that we see it from 100 different angles. I didn't know if you noticed that. We see every turn, everything, every accessoire in the scene, in that mise-en-scène that he makes. We see everything there. He plays with everything. There is no fucking thing that is not there that he doesn't play with. Other than that, we see the nature, right? There's a big focus. I think it's like 50-50 of what you can see from outside, the nature, and the very strange type of nature during a wartime, right? It makes sense, but a very strange type of sceneries that we see. Those tall trees, I don't know if you agree, is very, I don't want to say cinematic, because you don't see it in other cinema, right? It's very Tarkovskian. The way, the space between those trees and the way we travel between those trees. Other than that, like there was just something that I noticed right now. Did you look at the, where the mission happens is actually again between those trees. We have trees there. We have a river. Trees are, we have a jungle or like whatever you call it, the woods. We have the river in the same place, right? The woods are actually in the river, right? They're hiding between the river. And we have those lights, the flashlights or whatever you want to call it. So this weird combination of everything natural, right? You see everything natural in this movie actually in different scenes. But at that moment, it was interesting for me. You see everything together, right? Woods and river and all of these elements, light, the way he plays with light, because it's not a colored movie, black and white. It's amazing, right? The way the lighting works. So look at these the basement, I talked about the basement. Isn't the basement strange, right? Where is that basement really, right? It seems like a house. Have you noticed there are fences there inside the house? It doesn't really make sense. The way that the space works, it's like from nowhere. There is a mirror on the wall, the big mirror on the wall. It's like an abandoned place. We really don't know where this place is, right? There are scripts on the wall, as I said. It's just nowhere, right? But the way Tarkovsky plays with the space is not just this. If it was like this, then it wasn't notable that much. But the way he plays with the space is much bigger than that. He plays with the space in a way that wants to do something, pose the question that here it goes into a little bit of philosophy, but the question of reality that Plato asked. Do you remember the story of the cave and the fire and what do you call it? Like alam usul. I don't know what you call it in English.
Glory of
The Plato's wall or whatever, right? That you see the reflections of a reality on the wall, right?
It's called Plato's cave.
Plato's cave, yeah, but I don't know what you call those representations. But it's actually the idea of, if you want to look at it in a scientific, I know a lot of you guys are engineers, right? The way that a three-dimensional world is being represented and reduced to a two-dimensional world of just a wall, a cave. And how we are looking at the shadows. There are a lot of shadows here, right? But it's not just about that. We look at the world. What is cinema actually? Cinema is the representation of a reality on this screen, right? So what he is trying to do is trying to show us, and he's trying to poke us at every turn, that what I'm showing you is not necessarily reality. It's not necessarily, he calls it naturalism. It's not necessarily naturalism. If I want to show you naturalism, I have to show you a pure documentary, right? And even that is not really reality. I'm showing you another version of reality, right? So be aware that is not a three-dimensional reality, right? I know that I can't make a three-dimensional reality for you. I am making a representation of reality that is not the whole thing, right? So at every moment he does that. Again, remember, I want to give you an example that's, I think it was NaMaNa. The example when Gaitsev is waiting for Ivan so that he comes back, or we don't know what happens there. Ivan is missing. They are in the woods. And Gaitsev is standing there. We see a very tight close-up of Gaitsev. And then we see the boat is passing away. I wish I could know that. What chapter is it? Maybe I find it at some point in the comments. I will show you again. Sure, yeah. So Gaitsev is waiting. The boat is moving, right? You see the front of the boat in the river, and it's dark. And you see the reflection of the trees on the water. And then you go back, you edit us back to Gaitsev, and he is not in the boat. He's not moving. He's just standing there. But then again, you cut back to the boat. It's moving again, and you see trees are on the surface of the water, right? And you would see, if you read his, I understand that you should read some of his thoughts in this book, but you would see he's very well aware of the Plato's cave. He's actually using it in that scene to say something about, right? What I'm showing you is not necessarily reality. What I'm showing you is a screen.
It's a shadow.
Is a shadow. Is something that couldn't represent the real reality. It's amazing that he is showing that with that scene, I think. The second thing that he talks about and he plays with is time, the concept of time. Again, in that example, I told you, right? That was one example that he was waiting there, but the boat was traveling. Actually, you see it's amazing because you see that the time doesn't work out really well in his movies. Sometimes you see in the beginning scene, you see Ivan is coming from the left, and he's running, and then he is far away, he is in a long shot, right? If you watch it again, it takes about 4 or 5 seconds. He comes to the tight close-up in front of the camera. It doesn't make sense. The time in Tarkovsky's movies don't make sense. The time is not a real time. Again, he's poking with the idea that I can do whatever I want, right? I can do whatever I want with the space. I can do whatever I want with the time. So why should I show you the reality? Why shouldn't I show you something that doesn't make sense? You see a lot of, in terms of space, what kind of camera movement does he like? Who can say that, you think? What did you see more than anything else in terms of his camera movements?
Close up.
No, movement.
Swinging, but it's in the rooms, you can see the, it's like from the eyes of the viewer, you can see the work. It's not like camera.
Yeah.
It's not a stable.
But yeah, you see a lot of POVs, obviously. That is a point of view, right? But the camera movement that he wants is, he doesn't want like just a pan, just a normal pan that you see in a lot of movies. He doesn't want an edit. So let's say 2 people are having a talk, right? Let's say me and Mehdi are talking here. A normal director, when we are having a talk, would have a camera here, would take a look, right? Would take a view of him. And then when I start talking, there's a camera behind his back. He starts taking my picture, and right, that is the way the dialogue is being formed. Not Tarkovsky, not at all. The way Tarkovsky works about the dialogue scene is like that. I would explain how. But in terms of his camera, he doesn't have 2 standalone cameras sitting somewhere. What he does more than anything in all of his movies, and even here you saw a lot, is a travel shot. He loves cranes. He puts a crane, right, in ریلایی که دوش کامرا رو میذارن و حرکت میکنه بهش میگن camera, crane و camera, traveling shot. He loves travel shots. In a slow movement traveling shot, right? There is somebody here talking, the other person is there instead of being in front of him. He says something, then the camera moves for 5 seconds. After that he goes there, and we see the other perspective of the song, right? The space is different. Actually, the dialogue is extending. Instead of like a quick dialogue back and forth, we see that people are talking in an extended time. Other than that, you see a lot of this, I call it displacement, or not me, but there are other people as well. I call it displacement. What does it mean? It means that somebody is talking, you don't see them at all. It's not there in front of the camera, right? The voice is coming from somewhere else. Sometimes you don't even know if that person is there or not. It's a hallucination, right? It's the voices that are coming back. But a lot of times, even in normal dialogue, you don't see the person who is there. A lot of times you don't see the person who is saying something. There is a scene, again in the romance scene, I don't know if you notice, the girl is looking at the camera. Colin is asking him a question. And Colin is asking a question, what is your name? Right? You have a pretty name or whatever. And then she starts moving, and you see a lot of the travel shot, as she said, in the woods, in the romance scene. But then, after she moves, we see that the Colin is not coming from where camera is. Colin is coming from back of the girl, right? So the voice is coming from behind the camera, but he is coming from there. You see another scene where, I call it, just so that we remember, the nightmare, the simulation of the revenge. Because Ivan wants to go and take a revenge of his family, right? That is his motivation, to kill the Germans. So when everyone is out, he has this, what do you call it? Knife. And then, the dagger or whatever. He goes and he's preparing for that scene. He has a flashlight. You remember that scene? He has a dagger and flashlight. He has shut down everything, no light there. He turns on the flashlight. he sees the soul, the images that he has, the hallucinations that he has. At one moment, you see that the light is on a lady. It has a travel shot. It goes to this side. Who do you see in the picture? That is strange. Ivan himself, who had the flashlight. He is in the light of his own, right? He is in the light of his own flashlight. How is it possible, right? Is he seeing himself? It's called displacement, right? So we can call it a displacement. It's actually a very psychological concept when you feel that you are somewhere else in the space. So the space, the idea of time doesn't add up, doesn't match with each other, and these are the things that he's using with that. Another scene, again from end of that scene, if you remember, it has a lot of tension. It's a very high tension scene. He is ringing the bells, right? Oh my God, the music is nice. I think you guys have noticed this one, right? He's ringing the bells, bum, bum, bum. It's like 10 times, 10, 20 times. And then I think it cuts somewhere else. It goes back, you see him ringing, and he stops. But the ringing is continued. What else do you really want to see from a director, right? From an artist, to show you that in this experience that you are having, right? It's something from a different nature. It's not the same time and a space. It's all about time and a space. He uses this story for a couple of reasons, because it gives him some kind of a context, and he explains why. But I think the way he uses these small details, if you watch it again, the way he uses these small details is amazing. Another thing that he does with time, as I said, the travel shots are very slow, right? But not always. We have travel shots that are super fast. I don't know if you noticed again, right? We have scenes that when they're having a dialogue, in order to cut between them, the camera, right? Something like this, if you remember. The camera just travels, but travels in a super fast pace, right? It's not like editing, right, in other movies that you see that edits, right? It's not like that. Tarkovsky doesn't believe in editing in that sense. He wants to travel that space between the two protagonists. But the way he does it is that I can go with any space any speed I want, but I have to travel this. I have to take this journey, right? I have to use all of this space. I have to consume up all of this space. Looking at the camera, super tight close-ups, right? We have super tight close-ups. Why? The lighting, if you notice, in that basement, there's no light really. It's a basement. But it's, I think, the way it emphasizes on where the camera or we as an audience have to look, it's always bright. And there is the source of the light, if you notice, there is one front door that is usually closed. When the front door is open, yes, there is a good amount of light coming from there. But other than that, there is one candle that is firing up and like brightens everywhere in that bigger space. I think these are all under control. Another interesting thing that I love about Tarkovsky in his style, and it relates to space and time as well in a way, is using of accidents, using of coincidence. تصادف، اتفاقاتی که فکر میکنیم، در واقع اینجوری بگیم تصادف توی کروشه، اتفاقاتی که فکر میکنیم که مثلا همینجوری افتاده و این هم فیلم برداری کرده، مثلا پاش لیز میخوره روی قایق و ما یه لحظه میخندیم، تنشن عوض میشه. Tarkovsky is, I think, is super naughty here in a sense. He loves to play with the perception that there are things that are out of my control. But actually, from the real stories that we know how he makes the movies, he controls everything. He's a micromanager in a sense. He controls everything. You know that Tarkovsky was expelled from Russia after a few films. So he comes to Europe, he comes to Italy. He makes the last two movies, I think, Sacrifice and Nostalgia in Italy, right? And he thinks that he comes there and he has lots of flexibility, right? He can say it whatever he wants. In Italy, actually, the people who helped him to make the movies, they were getting crazy because of him, because they explained that when for those two movies, when he was taking a shot, and he said that, okay, I want a cloud coming up, right, coming in this scene. I want to take a shot of a cloud moving, right? And then he stood there they say that he stood there on top of the hill, and for 3 days, sometimes for 3 days, we were there and we were proposing, what about this one? He said, no, this is not the one I want. I want the one that exactly matches what I have in mind, right? He has his ideas in mind. He want to do that. He doesn't do that. Even especially interestingly about animals, right? You see a lot of dogs in his movies, dogs movements. You see a dog and horse, I think, here, and there's different animals. He uses butterflies, goats, deer, rooster, exactly. There are a lot of animals. There are a lot of nature. But most of those, especially dogs, he has a weird obsession with dogs apparently. Most of those dogs, whatever they're doing is actually what Tarkovsky asked them, I want this type of movement, right? It's not that the dog is just turning his head away. He wanted that movement, and he wanted the dog to stand up and go and sit somewhere else. If he didn't, I don't know how they made it. They made the dog to do that. But if the dog is standing up and going and sitting somewhere else, if it doesn't do that, then the movie is not being made in that scene. So there are some examples here. If you remember the door, there are some small and big ones in accidents or coincidence, right? As I said, the tripping over the boat when Colin bashes Kaitsev and says go, and then he goes and he just trips there. That is one that I saw. The door that is being, do you remember that door scene that the crazy guy is coming and he's looking for a nail, right? That is an interesting scene. The door that is being becoming open and closed, right? These are not at all coincidence. One else was even the lights in the background, where the lights are coming down in the woods, right? Those are all directed by him saying that where should that light come in? Otherwise, I don't want that scene. If you look at the geometry of how he makes it, it makes sense. The lights sometimes are coming right in the middle of the scene, in the background. It's amazing that he does that. There is a letter falling down from Masha, from her pocket, that Kaitsev goes and takes it. There is the documents at the end of the movie. These are obvious ones that just falls down. There is no coincidence in Tarkovsky's movies. I just tell you right away, if you watch other movies, that's the case. I think there's a lot that we can say. There's another thing that I want to say is, how much time? 5? I would say this, and I think there's a lot to be said, and we can talk more in comments. Sorry, I think we can talk really about like 2 hours for this. If I show you the scenes, it would be much longer, right? You can watch it together another time. Another thing, I'm saying these eight things that I said, these are his style, so I just want to cover those. The displacement, the edits that are wrong, right? In a cinematic way, as Hashar said, there's no right or wrong in it. The way he edits them, the voices are coming from back and forth, they're places that shouldn't be. But there's a reason for it. He wants a different experience over space and time. It's not that he's a bad director, right? He knows what he's doing. He's controlling that. The last thing I want to say is his style, is the use of symbols. There might be a discussion on that as well. The way he uses symbols actually amazes me as well, because it's really not symbol anymore. Again, it's like a quantum physics thing. It's the way he uses these symbols can be interpreted as actually not symbols at all. Just what is there, right? That is a problem in psychology. If you guys know, in psychology, when you see a dream, as Tarkovsky is all about dreams as well, right? By the way, if you are seeing a dream, the modern psychology is not able to tell you that, for example, if you are seeing a big boat or like something like the well that you saw, oh, those dream scenes, we have to talk about those dreams. Like a well or something there, right? Somebody is smoking a cigarette in a dream. The modern psychology cannot tell you, is that a real symbol? I mean, Freudian, Jungian, any type of psychology. Or it might be like, it might be just a cigarette. Right? It's actually what Freud said. It's a quote from Freud. And somebody asked, I saw myself smoking last night. What was that about? And he said, this is just a cigarette. Right? This is what Freud said himself. But really, that is a problem. And he uses that actually here in his movies. You see a lot of things, accessoires there. You see a well, you see like playing with water. You see rain, you see river, you see ocean, you see drops of water in Ivan's face, on Ivan's face. You see the bucket, right? All of those are there. Are there really symbols? It's very difficult to say that, right? Those tall trees, are they symbols? It seems like more than reality again, as I said. But because everything is messed up, so how can you tell if it's really a symbol or not? So I would say, I think that is interesting. The last things I would say, these are just themes that we can talk about that I didn't talk. I try to only talk about Tarkovsky's style because I think that's the more important thing. And through examples through the film, unfortunately, it's difficult and I don't have time to go over scenes as an examples to show you exactly what here I said. I'm hoping if this video is recorded, sometimes we can go if you want. Watch it again. I would say watch it again and look at it with a different view this time on space and time. But really we can talk about also one other perspective I can talk about is the characters. We can talk about Gaitsev, Colin, Masha, Ivan. The other characters are kind of peripheral, but we have these four important characters. The only thing I would say, because I don't have time, is that we have two triangles in a sense. That two sides of this triangle is Gaitsev and Colin. And the other what do you call it, head of the triangle, the other point of the triangle, one of the triangles is Masha. So Masha is creating some kind of a tension between Colin and Gaitsev. They both apparently like the girl, but it's very complicated. And the second triangle is between Ivan, Gaitsev, and Colin, right? So Ivan and Masha, they are in two kind of something like this, right? So they're in two different heads of two different triangles. They are kind of replacing each other, if you agree with me, right? Masha and Ivan, they are both the sources of love of these two men, right? They both care about them, but they're different. Colin's character is humorous, right? But naughty at the same time. He flirts with the girl. Colin is kind of suppressive. He has a kind of a cliche of a lover that doesn't express himself. Thank you very much. We can talk about the characters. I think it's an interesting story. And we can talk about the dreams that I forgot. We have 4 dreams from Ivan. And on top of those 4 dreams, we have 2 other things that are not even dreams. They're some kind of, I really don't know what they are. We have Masha's hallucination after the kiss when she comes back. It's a very strange scene, and the way it's portrayed, right? You don't know if she's first, after the scene, you think she's afraid, right? She's escaping, and then she comes back, and she seems that she likes him, or she's becoming a lover. It's very strange, right? And but that's a hallucination that he has. We have an hallucination of Ivan, as I said, when he's simulating killing the Germans, right? With hearing the voices of the souls of the dead. And also at the last scene, we have Gaitsev seeing or observing what is happening to Ivan when he is dead, right? We hear he hears the German voices coming in. It's kind of a hallucination as well, and it's a very strange scene. So I think we can talk about these, and that's it.
All right. Thank you very much.